turns into us and standing up and Bennington. I do hope Trish's jar comes in. Ooh, the press opens up. Pretending. John Morano, alright! He wants to have a chance here. That's why he scored that goal, and I just gave him that contract extension. Oh, Tristan! Do anybody?
And we are just moments away from overtime. All right, get your sunlight OT pools going, get your social media predictions.
Oh!
Pinned up along the boards. Scooped up along the wall by Steve. Coming down the left wing and into the zone. And he slides it quickly to Perrin. Oh, denies him with the save. I think he got the block on it.
Somehow the shooter got loose in the slot, but the goaltender's equal to the pass. That's a good save.
This is a face-off. They'll definitely want to win here inside the offensive zone. Hins wins the draw on their own end. Here they come on the attack. Oh, smart hits trying to put that one away. And the hit stop. A critical draw here. Kometis won the faceoff. He got all that hit. That opportunity is rejected.
I thought there was room to get by. Clearly, I was
possession so key in today's game. Slides in off the wing after the centerman tied him up. Fires it into the offensive zone. Seattle's got the puck along the boards. And now it's over to Lowry. Takes it to center. Takes the
What drop pass?
Puts it away in his own end. And down he goes as the puck goes free. Along the right side into the offensive zone. And he comes up with it.
Discoveries to talk about today.
A big face-off here inside the offensive end. Seattle's got it in the defensive zone. Sends a pass over. Into the offensive zone. Shen's got it along the boards. Seattle's got the puck along the wall. Over here with the steal. From his own end, he moves it up ahead.
You saw the lane, Dave James. That's a good pass.
And uses the length of his stick to knock that puck away. Oh, he'll feel that one. And now it's grabbed by Kaplan. Drills him. St. Louis gains a hold of possession. They try to maintain possession inside the defensive zone. Comedics gain possession along the boards. Gains the zone through the middle. Toffoli's going to put it against the half wall. Final horn sounds, bringing this one to a close. Talk about a critical goal in overtime, Ray, as they even things up.
They had to put in extra work to get the extra reward. They're now even in the series. That was a huge goal for them.
For my broadcast partner, Ray Farrar, my name is James Cholsky. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night.
And in 2001, the city was located. Every summer, excavations continue to carry out and learn more about this area and the secrets it holds that come all the way from prehistoric times. In our number 8 spot today, we have Mohenjo Daro. This is a location whose name is said to roughly translate to, quote, Mound of the Dead Men. This is one of the world's oldest urban settlements, as it was found and built somewhere around 2,600 to 2,500 BC in what is now Pakistan, but it was abandoned in the 19th century BC as the civilization that called this place home declined. For almost 4,000 years, the site was seemingly forgotten about, and the remains of it were undocumented until an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, R.D. Banerjee, visited the site in 1920 and found a flint scraper which convinced him of the site's history. From here, excavations of the site began, and after the 1980s, it was named a World Heritage Site. In our number 7 spot today, we have Kraken, also known as Belus to the Egyptians. This was an ancient city that was located near the mouth of the Nile River. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took the first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began. This is all to say that, to legend, this city was super important. But aside from the legend, no one knew where this place was or how to find it. Well, just over 2,000 years ago, it turns out that either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two hit the city and submerged it underwater. It used to be believed that this place and Thonis were two separate places, and that both were located on what is now Egyptian mainland, but neither of those things turned out to be true. In reality, in 1999, after 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even just a few months ago, in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the dome palm tree, as well as grape seeds that date back to the early 4th century BC, have been found among the ruins. In our number 6 spot today, we have Sigiriya. In 1831, it is said that Major Jonathan Forbes of the 78th Highlanders of the British Army was on horseback in halfway back from a journey when he spotted the bush-covered summit of Siberia. In the 1890s, archaeological work slowly began on the site, but Harry Charles Curtis found
OG should tell us who wins and who loses, and they're ready to get underway. Overtime has begun, and no one will love these moments. Since the deep inside that ancient city, here's a look across the steam. Puts the puck away. Taken here by Hill. Sees he's got a bit of it against the wall. Slides the puck across. Here they come over the wing. Sends it into the no tap. Puck scooped up by the Bucks.
Go!
Look at how it's changed the series, Ray. The win and the series lead.
Puts them in a great position here. They needed to have that. Of course they do. You're in overtime. It's so stunning when the goal goes into the net. And that's a really big goal for them.
My name is Jason Austin on behalf of Ray Cooper. Thanks so much for hanging out with us this one intense evening for this playoff atmosphere.
Overstated. There are even accounts which claim that the University of Ancient Taxila was one of the earliest universities in the world, which is unbelievable. And in number 4 spot today we have Machu Picchu. For this one we have another one of the most famous and well-known lost cities, Machu Picchu. This site was built over 500 years ago and it was once known as the lost city of the Inca until the modern discovery of it came in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham. Him and his team actually stumbled upon it almost accidentally while looking for another ancient city. Machu Picchu was built by the incredible Incas who have surprised us in our modern times many, many times with their unbelievable technology and abilities that they had all those years ago. It is believed that this place may have been built by the Inca emperor as a sort of a state. Machu Picchu was built in 1450, but it was abandoned about a century later at the time of the Spanish conquest. As of 2007, it has been voted one of the Google Career Certificates provide online training for in-demand jobs, training for jobs in IT support, project management, data analytics, user experience design, and more. Put your skills to work with new 7 wonders of the world, and work continues to be done on it to maintain and restore this wonderful location. In our number 3 spot today, we have Pompeii. One of the most famous lost cities ever, the Roman city of Pompeii was destroyed in 79 AD when the eruption of Mount Vesuvius exploded and volcanic ash was strewn about the city. Fast forward all the way to 1748 when the Duke of Naples had a summer palace built just 24 kilometers south of Naples on Italy's west coast. Through the construction, as those working on the palace began to dig, they started to come across buildings and streets, and from here, once news spread, people began to flock to see the area, and it was realized that what had been uncovered was the lost city of Pompeii. Throughout the Victorian times, people would come to see as more of this town was uncovered, and it found an amphitheater, a forum, houses and shops, everything you'd expect the town to have. This one was just ancient and buried. Now the ancient city of Pompeii is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the entire world, and excavations still continue on with secrets always being revealed. In our number 2 spot today, we have Star of Bran. This was an area that is located in Scotland, and it was found in an exceptionally surprising way. In 1850, there was a huge storm that hit Scotland, and it was so bad that around 200 people passed away from it. The next day, however, once the storm had passed, residents of the Orkney Isles began to notice that part of a cliff had dislodged, but it uncovered a sort of hidden settlement. Techs were able to date this site back from 3200 BC to 2200 BC, and it was shown to have been inhabited for about 600 years. There were round stone homes here, and the roofs were made out of whale bone. The design of this little city suggested that there wasn't a hierarchy, but rather a group of people living peacefully as farmers, herdsmen, and traders. While this site is small, the houses are in quite great shape for the amount of time it's been. This settlement is Europe's most complete Neolithic village, and while it is older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, it's been called the Scottish Pompeii because of how well preserved it is. No one is exactly sure why the residents of this village abandoned it, but it is likely that a change in climate is somewhat, if not fully, responsible, and a storm might have been the reason those living here had to leave in haste, which is seduced by how all of their belongings were left here. In our number one spot today, we have Corral. An American history professor named Paul Cossack was absolutely fascinated by ancient settlements, like I'm sure a lot of us are, but this passion led to him devoting much of his time to studying in Peru, which has such an incredibly rich history. In 1948, while in Peru, Paul made the discovery he'd been waiting for when he came across the dry remains of an ancient city. The remains were carbon dated and placed to be about 5,000 years old. This city was once the home to around 3,000 inhabitants pre-Inca, and this was already a thriving location while the pyramids were being built. That is how old this settlement is. It appeared to be quite a peaceful place, as there were no obvious signs of battles or weapons, but among the remains were homes, plazas, temples, and an amphitheater. It is said that the city was abandoned in 2000 BC, and in 2009 AD, it was made a World Heritage Site. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye. From here, a tsunami then hit. Starting off this countdown, we have the chariot. A really cool artifact found in King Tut's tomb was his chariot. The chariot was found dismantled, but they ended up reconstructing it for display. Okay, first off, how did they build that ancient thing without any blueprints? That's talent right there. Because I struggle building IKEA furniture even with blueprints. Now, what makes this artifact significant is that it's theorized that the chariot might have been King Tut's father's death. King Tut was found with a fractured lower leg, shattered pelvis, and ribs. A new analysis shows that he was crushed on one side of his body, likely while on his knees. So some believe that he fell from his chariot in a horrific accident and died. If this is the case, then that thing is most certainly cursed. Moving on to number 9, we have the meat mummy container. So apparently mummies get hungry on the way to the afterlife. As a result, they are often buried with food. The food is carefully preserved so that they can last a long time for their lengthy journey. This is done by preparing the meat for eating, then wrapping the meat in linen. So they basically mummify the meat. In King Tut's tomb, they found 48 containers of meat mummies.
Sutton!
Come on, it's time. Source of food from him. But come on, guys, you're making the curse worse than it is. This dude's gonna be mad. I mean, I would be if people took away food from me. We all know how sacred food is. In our 8th spot, we have the toe and finger cap. This is one of the more odd items found in King Tut's tomb. So, King Tut was found with gold toe caps on his feet and fingers. That's right. Just little golden covers for each individual toe and finger. These were placed on the divine after death so that their toes and fingers keep their shape. These were placed on his body during mummification. It's also thought to protect the dead from magical dangers. Now, I'm hoping that they didn't remove these little caps from his body, but chances are they probably did. So, if anything happens to his digits, boy, he's gonna be mad. Coming in at number 7, we have the woven gloves. Experts believe that this next piece is one of the few items that was actually used by King Tut while he was alive. International Egyptologist Tarek El Awadi said, and I quote, "Most of the objects found in the tomb are ceremonial or designed to be used by the pharaoh in the afterlife. But he believes that these gloves were probably worn by King Tut, either during the wintertime or when he was riding his royal chariot." That's pretty cool. I mean, the gloves don't look too stylish, but I think all of these ancient artifacts are so amazing. Moving on to number 6, we have the Inopen jars. As part of the burial process, Egyptians would place the internal organs of the dead into 4 jars before mummification. One jar had his lungs, another had his stomach, another had his intestines, and one was for his liver. Apparently I say intestines wrong. That's how it is in Canada. I'm sorry. The jars were found inside of an alabaster chest. It was thought that King Tut needed these organs in the afterlife, which is why they were preserved.
Officials are ready to draw the puck here in overtime.
Protecting them. But now these jars have been moved to the
All you paying attention in this arena. Sudden overtime is underway. Gets the puck in deep. Sees the goalkeeper from all boards. Feeds it to him. And now he tries to get it across the breast.
Goals. Returning. Cross.
The Blues have it now. There's the whistle. Offside is the call. Stopping the play.
Mohenjo's trying to change a few things up. This pointless streak is starting to nag at him.
The centerman right into position. Hits is one to draw here in the neutral zone. Motion to the press. Looks the puck into the offensive zone corner. Slides the pass off to Fulton. Dishes in to Steen. The Blues are feeling much better about themselves as they go over in OT.
I thought they were starting to win now, James, but they get the winner, and it's their points in the back pocket.
And that'll do it from ringside in the North Ray Bar. My name is James Mosby. And I'll talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
So, a new was like a kind of no trespassing sign. But we trespassed, so now it's cursed. I mean, it said that if you was punished with immortal to ignore its warning and disturb the dead. And our first one, we have Tuck Burial Mask. Tuck Burial Mask, otherwise known as a death mask, was found in King Tut's coffin resting directly on the shoulders of his mummy. Okay, with a name like Death Mask, gotta be cursed. So these masks were made to resemble the person that it was placed on. It was done so that the spirits could recognize the body after death and help them to the underworld. The mask was filled with oils, which helped with the mummification process. Not only that, but at the back of the mask, there was a protective spell inscribed into it. The spell was to protect Tut's limbs as he traveled through the underworld. Now, according to rumors, Tut's ear on the mask was accidentally snapped off and then glued back on. So, not only did they remove a protective mask from King Tut, but they broke him too. Yeah, King Tut is probably really upset about that. Let's hope this didn't interfere with him getting into the underworld. Coming in at number 2, we have King Tut. So obviously, one of the biggest discoveries in King Tut's tomb was King Tut himself. He was buried in a coffin, placed inside another coffin, inside another coffin, inside another coffin. There were 8 coffins in total. So like I mentioned before, anyone that handles King Tut's body or his artifacts are said to be cursed. After Tut's body was found, he was sent to a radiologist to get x-ray. The radiologist's name was Sir Archibald Douglas Reed. The next day, after conducting the x-ray, Reed fell sick. He died 3 days later. His death is blamed on King Tut's curse. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Cobra staff. So, this is where it gets interesting. Rumor has it the reason why several men mysteriously died after the expedition was because one of the workers stole King Tut's Cobra staff. Now, the Carter claims that when they found the tomb, it was already robbed. But he may have said that to cover up the fact that him and his team took a couple of artifacts as souvenirs, particularly the Cobra staff. Ironically enough, one of the Carter's team members, named Henry Breckton, returned home to find his pet Mary eaten by a cobra. And the cobra was still occupying the cage. A cobra staff goes missing, and a cobra is found in his home. Was this? I think so. Coming in after the 10, we have the Kurds working to the Giza. A 4,500-year-old tomb has just been relocated near the Great Pyramid of Giza. The mass burial site in the Tribal Mountains was closed for nearly 30 years in order to protect it from thieves. The Giza Plateau tomb is thought to be cursed and contains the remains of high-profile workers. These mostly weren't slaves, they were high-profile, including the ancient royal palace supervisor and their chief. He was buried there with his 2 wives and his 18 children. Visit. The tomb contains 2 fake doors, so clearly people weren't supposed to get in. Inscribed on the wall was the following curse warning. All people who enter this tomb who will make evil against this tomb and destroy it, may the crocodile be against them in the water and the snakes against them on the land. May the hippopotamus be against them in the water and the scorpions against them on the land. The tomb was reopened for the public recently in order to boost tourism in the
The long mark was saved mankind from ruin. Let it fade to this. The war dancer must be
area will be back on the morning. I'm not sure about the visit. Going out number 9, here's the curse, and another death. Curses aren't supposed to be funny, and a death out, but I can't help but thinking the Egyptians went a little overboard when describing the curse of the sun of Hathor and effect too. If I'm all read, shall we? He who enters this tomb will lose their earthly possessions and honours, be incinerated in a furnace in excretion rites, capsized and drowned at sea, have no successors, receive no tomb or funerary offerings of their own, and their bodies would decay to finish stuff without sustenance, and their bones will vanish. Cool, basically, all of the bases are pretty much covered there. Honest Team was broken into is to copy the has actually been opened yet, and it has a very well preserved base art. Probably let's keep it that way. Coming out number 8, we have the Black King of Osiris. Am I here for an eerie black tomb? No, I'm not. Am I here for an eerie black tomb belonging to the Egyptian gods again? Brilliant. Gonna have to pause and open that one up. In 2015, a 20th dynasty structure was unearthed near Luxor on the west bank of the River Nile. To Osiris was the mythological god of the dead, but it seems that the Egyptians made a tomb for him anyway. All ancient Egyptian burial chambers were associated with Osiris, as pharaohs and rich Egyptians wanted to be able to share the afterlife with him. If Osiris decorates normal tombs, who decorates his? Demons holding knives. Massive. Not good. The tomb was opened in 2015, and yet still brought violent protests in the country. I don't know about you, but I think it should have been a bad idea to open the God of the Dead's tomb. Just a hunch. Coming in at number 7, we have tombs with the donkey curse. You may not have learned this particularly gnarly piece of information at school when you were studying the ancient Egyptians, but a lot of 21st dynasty curses used to protect their wills of the Andes in Egypt, and they were subject to a curse from the god Seth. Now, Seth was the god of storms, violence, and deserts. He also happened to be a donkey. Anyway, curses involving Seth specifically said that he would haunt those who entered the tombs. So, I wouldn't want to mess with a curse that promised the donkey would, well, a donkey curse was famously found in the tomb of Dead Alvarez on Quito, but we don't know if it actually, never came to fruition, because who would have picked it up? Number 5. A mysterious mummy thought to belong to the Princess of Amon-Ra was dug up in a vault in Luxor in the late 1800s, or so the story goes. 4 Englishmen were said to have drawn lots to buy the mummy in the 1890s, with one paying several £1,000 sterling to take the mummy. It seems that this man walked out into the desert later that day and never returned. Another of the men was shot, having to have his arm amputated. Another lost all his money, and another suffered a severe illness. Nonetheless, the coffin eventually reached England, where it caused all kinds of drama. It was eventually gifted to the British Museum, where it was later put up for sale for further chaos. Basically, the British Museum didn't want any of it, it was bringing bad luck to the building. The legend has it that the mummy was sold to a wealthy American and packaged to cargo hold of the RMS Titanic. Well, you'll know what happened there. Other people dismiss this as pure myth, as there is no evidence for a mummy in the common or the ship, but honestly, who knows? Coming in number 4, we have the Cosmic Void. The Heritage Innovation Preservation Project has been working with Cairo University and the Egyptian government to scan the Great Pyramids in Giza. In 2017, a pyramid housing the tomb of the Great Pharaoh Khufu showed a mysterious and spooky void when it was scanned. Built in 2560 BC, this weird void has been locked away and kept secret for over 4,000 years. By scanning the pyramid with cosmic rays, the team behind the research estimates that the void is 98 feet long and 50 feet high. It's pretty big. What even is this void? Is it a black hole? Is it a curse? Seems to be quite nothingness, which in itself is pretty creepy to me. Some archaeologists are calling it an intentional design element, but what is it? It seems this void is completely sealed off from any known passageways inside the pyramid. If there is getting it, so how was it even built? So far, the scanner and the team haven't ventured into the void yet, which honestly, I think is for the best. Kind of crazy could be unearthed. Coming into number 3, we have Aston's curse at Hunet Devil. Home to the tomb of Osiris and Inventora, the Hunet Devil of Apollos was excavated by archaeologist Sam Cameron in the 1940s. Those who worked on the excavations in the area reported spells of dizziness, headaches, Sure, this is a friend, and in some cases, teachers. At the time, the team thought they acted the artist-headed god Tom by disturbing the ancient curse. In reality, it was discovered that the team contains a lot of noxious gas, which probably spells sickness. Either way, someone said they wanted to let the team follow on. Coming in at number 2, we have the two cursed mummies of Alexandria. In 1699, it was claimed by author Louis Pencher that a Turkish man had purchased two mummies excavated from the tombs in Alexandria. It seems the man wanted to study them for medicinal purposes, which actually was very common back in that era. Often people would resort to robbing graves so they could have bodies to study. Anyway, the mummies were taken on board a ship from Egypt to Poland on a voyage across the Mediterranean Sea. Unfortunately, removing the mummies from their tomb was a terrible idea. The man and his crew started to have violent and horrific nightmares, saying they were haunted by two ghosts. They soon realized the ghosts haunting them were the spirits of the mummies. They tossed them overboard, and as soon as the corpses were submerged in the sea, their visions stopped. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have a black granite sarcophagus. In 2018, archaeologists in Egypt found a massive black granite sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt, that dated all the way back to 2,000 years ago. Rumors immediately started swirling about what this sarcophagus might have contained, but the best way to find out, well, you have to open it, of course. Instead of some crazy curse being unleashed, the first thing that escaped this tomb when opened was a horrible, unbearable smell. Apparently, it was so bad that the site had to be evacuated for a while before they could return to finish opening it up. When they finally were able to completely lift the lid, they found a red, brown-like sewage water flooding the bottom, which is likely where that horrible smell was coming from. Other than all that gross stuff inside the sarcophagus was bones of 3 people. Unfortunately, the mummies did not end up being well preserved, so only the skeletal remains were still intact. It is believed that the people inside may have been soldiers from the time of Pharaoh. This is believed because one of the skulls had a crack in it from the arrow. There was a box found along with the steel, but unfortunately, due to time passed, it has been weathered beyond recognition. But that is not the only way researchers can find out where the soldiers are from and what time period they lived in. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Night-Armed Man. In 2018, while researchers were excavating the 1,200 to 1,400-year-old necropolis in northern Italy, they made a gruesome discovery that led to us learning a super interesting story of someone who lived all those years ago. Inside this necropolis, there were the remains of a man, but what set him apart from the others is that he had a knife-blade prosthetic arm. Further analysis of his bones showed that his arm had been removed via blunt force trauma. Normally, all those years ago, the wounds would have killed you, if not from the blood loss, then from infection, because of course this was the time before antibiotics. But somehow this man managed to survive it all, and in doing that, he made himself the scariest prosthetic limb I've ever heard of. He replaced his missing hand with a long knife buckled to his arm with leather straps. It's like pretty metal. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Tomb of Thomas. A few years ago, archaeologists were searching in the Tomb of Thomas for the high-ranking Egyptian official. Within the tomb, they found shards that contained something they weren't exactly clear of. Well, further research was able to date this substance back to 3,200 years ago, and guess what it was? Cheese. Dr. Enrico Greco from the University of Catania, who worked with colleagues from the Cairo University in Egypt to determine what this substance was, said, quote, the material analyzed is probably the most ancient archaeological solid residue of cheese ever found to date. We know it was made mostly from cheese and goat's milk, but for me, it's really hard to imagine a specific flavor. Well, this is a super cool discovery and one that gives us incredible insight into those times thousands of years ago. Imagine finding a 1,000-year-old cheese. That sounds absolutely disgusting. Honestly, I'm so grateful for the scientists who put up with things like that so we can have answers to these sorts of things. In our number 7 spot today, we have cats. In 2018, archaeologists were excavating a 4,500-year-old tomb that was found near Cairo. And if you're a cat person, this one might be one for you to skip over. Inside of this tomb, not only did researchers find 100 gilded wooden cats, along with a bronze statue of Bastet, the goddess of cats, but they made the startling discovery of
Archaeological design, archaeological and Roy shit. Actually, after I don't pay Finland for 1 more year and then I'll resign him, but I can definitely resign Roy though. For Faye still needs 1 more year, that's fine. You have all the time in the world because he is going to be my #1 center for this fucking team.
The mummification process is highly effective. In at number 6 spot today, we have scratch marks. When archaeologists opened the tomb they had located that dated all the way back to the Qing Dynasty, they started.
Yeah, well, Ekman to stay in Sweden as well. For him to grow, me to a medium top 6.
And really fun. Rice Krispies square bars. Certainly did not expect to find what was inside. They weren't shocked to find the remains of a person, but what was shocking was the state she was in. Her skin had turned black like charcoal, and she had a terrifying expression on her face, with her mouth wide open like she had been screaming. To make matters even worse, apparently there were scratch marks that she had left on the inside. Further research showed that it is believed that this woman suffered from a difficult birth, and during labor, she fainted. Since childbirth used to be a way more dangerous activity, it is thought that her family believed she had passed away, and then they buried her, and, of course, you know the rest. What a horrifying story for everyone involved. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Silver Sumerian Harp. The Silver Sumerian Harp was found in a very large royal tomb of ancient Sumeria. You might be sitting there thinking, a harp isn't exactly terrifying, and I agree. This harp certainly was not a terrifying find, but the scene it was found amongst absolutely was. The tomb contains not only the harp, but the musician who was playing it, along with an entire group of musicians, servants, and several soldiers, all who were sealed in this tomb while they were performing their duties. Many of them were dressed in what was considered formal attire and were wearing gorgeous jewelry. The area where all of these people were found is referred to as the death pit because of the large number of bodies found within it. Music was an incredibly important part of life, celebratory and ritual occasions in ancient Mesopotamia. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Tomb of Sunken Skulls. In 2009, archaeologists were excavating the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed in Sweden, and they began to find the foundations of some sort of a stone structure. Yeah, we're talking about a tomb found at the bottom of a lake. Further research began to unearth the usual things like animal bones, stone tools, and that sort of thing, but they also uncovered skulls belonging to 10 people that are believed to have lived 8,000 years ago. They found another 11th skull buried deep within the mud, and when they uncovered it, they found that fragments of another one of the skulls had been deliberately launched inside of this 11th skull. All of the skulls were jawless and were mounted on stakes. There are a few theories as to why the skulls were here, and some people believe that this site may have been used for secondary burials, but others believe that this tomb belonged to enemies that were killed in combat. Either way, researchers were rightfully shocked when they unearthed this tomb. In another 3 spot today, we have the Beatles. Okay, I know this one won't be horrifying to everyone, but as you guys know, I really hate bugs a lot. This one seems like my worst nightmare. As it turns out, mummies aren't the only things that tombs can preserve. Unfortunately, some little beetles from 3,000 years ago managed to find themselves preserved inside of a lump of funerary bread that was found inside of a tomb inside the necropolis of ancient Thebes. Food would often be left inside of ancient Egyptian tombs because they were symbolic offerings intended to feed the deceased in the afterlife. While the deceased apparently were the only ones chowing down because the virtually 50 beetles were found inside the bread. I just can't imagine being stoned to find your mummy and instead finding bugs. In our number 2 spot today, we have the tomb of Hatshepsut. She was the 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, and she was the 2nd historically confirmed female pharaoh. She was an incredibly interesting person who we could really talk about all day, but we are here talking about tombs, so let's cut to when hers was found and unearthed. There were a few interesting things found within her tomb, but the real horrors came after when they began to examine her remains. They were actually able to find a cause of death for her and to actually attribute it to something she possessed. They found benzoprine carcinogenic skin lotion with the pharaoh, and it is believed that this gave her colon cancer. It is likely that she poisoned herself accidentally while she was just trying to soothe her skin. Being diagnosed with something like that with the help of modern medicine is already a horrible, painful, and scary thing. I couldn't even imagine having to go through it all those years ago without any kind of a treatment. In our number one spot today, we have this ancient curse. To end off this list today, we have a good old-fashioned curse that was unleashed from inside the tomb. Okay, maybe that was a bit of an exaggeration, but there really was a curse found on the inside of this tomb. The tomb of Engelhorn was a pharaoh's official who is thought to have lived around 4,000 years ago during Egypt's 6th dynasty, was an above-ground tomb that was shaped like a rectangular box. Inside of the tomb, they found a curse inscribed that warns anyone who dared to disturb it. The curse, roughly translated, states that anything a trespasser, quote, might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property. It then goes on to warn the trespasser of his knowledge of spells and secret magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with the fear of fleeing ghosts. These kinds of curses have been found in other tombs, and while they certainly are nothing like the ones depicted in horror movies about mummies, they might still be a little unnerving to those unearthing this discovery. Starting off this list at our number 10 spot, we have 1855. This is a tomb that is referred to by a number rather than a name, because we don't actually know who lies inside of the tomb. While this tomb had its modern discovery in 1907, we still haven't quite found the answers surrounding this mystery. To make things a little more eerie, while the walls of the actual tomb are bare, which is bizarre, as you walk down the steps towards the tomb, you'll notice that there are some markings leading up to it. You'll see inscribed on the wall of the entrance the words which can be translated to, quote, the evil one shall not live again. If this wasn't enough to give you an unsettling feeling, the coffin inside of the tomb has been desecrated with part of the face having been removed as well. So, all in all, we don't know a lot about what's going on down there, but it doesn't seem good. In our number 9 spot today, we have chapter 17. Archaeologists have a large and very exciting discovery as the 4,200-year-old funerary temple of Queen Nereid, who is the wife of the pharaoh Teti, was found. The recently excavated Saraka necropolis was stocked full of incredible treasures. Inside, there were over 50 wooden sarcophagi, there was a board game, a riverboat with rowers, statues, wooden masks, a shrine dedicated to the god of the dead Anubis, and there was a burial sanctuary dedicated to the queen. And while all of these are truly unbelievable finds, one of the most fascinating to researchers was a scroll from the Book of the Dead. The 13-foot-long papyrus scroll, which is referred to as Chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead, acts as a chilling guide to the afterlife. In our number 8 spot today, we have golden tongues. A team was working at a temple on the outskirts of the Egyptian city Alexandria when they discovered 16 burials in rock-cut tombs. It was here that they found some mummies that unfortunately had been poorly preserved over the last 2,000 years, but it was what they found with these mummies that was exceptionally interesting. Inside a few of the mummies' mouths were golden tongues nestled inside of their jawbones. It is thought that the dead were given these gold foil amulets that were shaped like tongues so that they could speak before the court of the god Osiris in the afterlife. Osiris is the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation, and he was also the judge of the dead, so it is imperative that those headed to the afterlife can trust him. When we break it down and understand why these gold tongues might have been placed with the bodies, it becomes less of a horrifying discovery and more of an absolutely fascinating one. In our number 7 spot today, we have 5,000-year-old tombs. While researchers were working in the Jakhalja province in the area where the Nile River drains into the Mediterranean Sea, they found something unbelievable. It was here that they unearthed tombs that were over 5,000 years old. 68 tombs from 3,300 BC during the Buto period were located, along with 5 that were from 3,100 BC during the Nakata III period. Some of the Buto tombs were found with the human remains in a squatting position, while the Nakata period vessels were more cylindrical and pear-shaped. This cemetery combines some of the earliest periods of Egyptian history along with some of the most important eras. Other cool things found in this area included ovens, stoves, pottery vessels, as well as amulets and scarabs, some of which were made out of semi-precious stones. In our number 6 spot today, we have Marcus. Inside the necropolis of Porto Sarno, which was found in the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, a tomb was found which held the remains of Marcus Venerius Cecilio, and these remains are the best preserved ones ever found in ruins. The partially mummified remains included hair and bones and even a partial ear, and they belonged to Marcus, who was a former slave who was able to rise through the ranks. This discovery was unusual because tests show that Marcus died around the age of 60, and during Roman times, adults were usually cremated. After being freed from slavery, Marcus was able to join a college of priests who were in charge of a form of emperor worship. Being buried in inside of a tomb is a reflection of the fact that when he passed, he was in good social and economic standing. It is believed that this tomb dates back decades before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, destroying Pompeii. In our number 5 spot today, we have the tomb storeroom. During the excavations of a 2,600-year-old vast necropolis that sits just south of Cairo, researchers unearthed the tomb, of course, or else why would I be talking about it right now? But here's the thing about this specific tomb. It had a storeroom that was housing about 2 dozen mummies. The tomb was located at the bottom of a 36-feet deep shaft, and the 22 mummies were found along the tomb walls. The mummies are believed to date back to 640 BC during the 26th dynasty, which was Egypt's last independent kingdom. Many of the mummies were unfortunately poorly preserved, so their identities, as well as the reason why so many were put into one room, is left as a bit of a mystery. And in number 4 spot today, we have a Bronze Age tomb. Imagine you're a farmer in Ireland, and one day you're this 90-year-old business and somehow manage to stumble upon an ancient tomb that's basically been untouched for thousands of years. Well, that's pretty much exactly what happened when a burial site was uncovered on southwest Ireland's Dingle Peninsula. Inside this site, researchers found human bones along with items that may give us some insight into prehistoric burial and death rituals. This tomb is believed to date back to the Bronze Age, but unlike other tombs from the time, this one was completely underground, which means that it may be even older than once suspected. The tomb was found during some land improvement work when literally a stone was turned over and it revealed the chamber underneath. And in our 3 spot today, we have mice. A couple years ago, in 2019, as archaeologists were searching through a well-preserved and beautifully painted tomb that had been found in the Egyptian town of Sohag. The tomb is thought to be from around 2,000 years ago and was built for a man named Tutu and his wife. Other than the human mummies that were found inside of this tomb, but researchers also found animal mummies, including dozens of mummified mice. This tomb is one of 7 that were found in the area after authorities found smugglers digging illegally for artifacts, which honestly sounds like it should be the plot of a movie. While I'm sure these kinds of discoveries are extremely important and helpful for all kinds of researchers, finding dozens of mummified animals along with human mummies probably isn't the nicest discovery there's ever been. In our number 2 spot today, we have a gibbon skull. Gibbons are a type of ape that are often characterized by their swinging ability coupled with their loud, bright calls. And the 8th century Chinese poet Levi described their voices as they swung past the Yangtze River. But here's the thing. Today, there are no gibbons that live anywhere near the river. Also, the gibbons that exist now have different fur patterns from the ones that are often depicted in classical Chinese paintings. This is led experts to believe that there must have been another kind of gibbon that is now vanished, and physical evidence of this kind of gibbon might have turned up in the most unexpected place: a tomb. This tomb, which was built by the grandmother of the first emperor of China nearly 2,300 years ago, contained a skull and a jawbone so distinct that scientists believe it must belong to this member of the now extinct gibbon genus. Many surviving gibbon species are now facing extinction, so it is likely that there were others in the past who unfortunately faced the same kind of fate. Let's talk about our dreams.
Okay, we're gonna teleport it. I dream of being a logistic. Good. What's your dream?
Think it up a million times. Morning all, welcome to Mediocre Monday. Of the teams that are on the board in today's
They played on November 4th in Seattle. That was a 5-2 victory for the Seattle Kraken. So it is up to Buffalo to try to keep it up that record and get to 9-10-3. For Seattle, of course, 7-13-1. As bad as that looks, they've won 3 of their last 4. So this is a game where if Seattle's going to show that they're really making those improvements, and they're going to stick, this is the kind of game you need to win. Then a half an hour later, 7:30 Eastern, for the Spirit, the 6-14-2 Vancouver Canucks in to take on the 6-15-2 Montreal Canadiens. The first 2 meetings, they'll meet again on March 9th, and of course the Canucks, it's been a really rough year. Montreal's been a really rough year. The records are almost identical. One of them fired their GM, the other one's the Canucks. So we'll see how things go tonight in these 2 teams. I would imagine that people will be excited to watch it on some level because if you stay in against each other without playing their offense, but still, that's the last year. So they can play each other a lot. Montreal won a bunch of those games. I said jokingly during the summer, well, they're not going to have Vancouver anymore, so that's going to hurt the record. And so we'll see how things go tonight. If last year's any indication, Foley's going to get a hat trick, and Allen might get a shutout. He plays. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. 7:30 Eastern already on also 4:30 Pacific Eastern time for the Arizona Coyotes and Winnipeg Jets. It is tough for me not to put an Akbar ranking on this. Arizona's 4-15-2. Winnipeg's 10-7-4. This is what we're talking about. Winnipeg and Pittsburgh both 10-7-4. Meaning they both won 10 of the 21 games they've played this year. Technically, they've lost more than they've won. This is the first of 4 meetings between Arizona, the 4-15-2 Arizona Coyotes, and the 10-7-4 Winnipeg Jets. We'll meet again on January 4th, April 27th, March 27th this year. So, yeah, it's interesting to see what happens between the current Jets and the former Jets. 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and 7-4 against Calgary Flames. We're 12-4-5. They went into Pittsburgh and won 4-0 on October 28th. So Pittsburgh looking for revenge in this one and looking to bounce back with an humiliating loss against the Montreal Canadiens. So for Calgary, they're looking to keep things rolling. They're 12-4-5 records, the best one on the board of any of the teams who are playing today. So I'll go on a limb and say today's game really aren't going to change that power ranking. Unless Arizona goes in and destroys Winnipeg, and then I'd like to do your discussion.
Stroll's part of your the first 9-4. And on your right side, it could be Captain. Maybe. If I leave Captain play on the right side, and then second line I'll have Sutton, so DeFrost, and maybe Gambrell.
softness. See, it's 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less. German ultra solid. It's always worth it. Now if you excuse me. We all know one that enjoyed it over.
Morning all. Alright, so some news of the day for today. For Montreal Canadiens, because they kind of made big news, but now San Jose just worked up upload this. We'll record this and upload it. Pretty big news with San Jose. Brendan Lemieux has been offered an in-person hearing. So there's some confusion about this, the idea that he's being offered an in-person hearing. What they do is they call him and say, look, we want to talk to you, you can down and talk to this person. Lemieux has the right to say no. I'm not doing that. And so that means they can suspend him for whatever they're going to suspend him for anyway. And it usually means it's going to be a long suspension. When they offer an in-person hearing, it's usually 6 days or more. There's the potential he can argue it down, but it's for the biting incident I'm ready to check. Interesting to see what's going to happen with this one. Really interesting to see. We'll hear about that, I would think, probably by the end of the night. Clint Costin, James Neal, both placed on long-term injured reserve by the St. Louis Blues, so the hits keep coming. And they called up Logan Brown. So Logan Brown was picked up from the Ottawa Senators, sent down to the minors. He will now get a chance to come up and maybe win himself a spot, right? Neal's run has been lackluster so far for St. Louis. Costin's been fine, but again, we'll see if this changes things. Somebody goes back on long-term injury reserve. It's possible somebody's stolen their job. Scott Bellamy resigned last night as the assistant general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. So there's stuff going on. Basically, Mark Bergevin, this is his final year. He's done. So he had rumor was that he had recommended Bellamy for the job, and then Jeff Molson had informed Bellamy that he would not be promoted. Bellamy was available because he wants to be the Canadiens. There are teams right now that might be looking for a general manager. Bellamy might be a good guy who's with the organization before maybe next, right? So, anyways, Bellamy right now is out there. So, and the team's talking to Jeff Gordon. Now, Jeff Gordon, of course, is the GM of the Rangers, but that's not the job they're talking to about. Rumor has it they're looking to get a president of hockey up. And then it has to be Dave Francophone, who would be the general manager of the team. So get that going. But basically, Gordon would act as a person to advise the general manager and oversee everything. The more public-facing job, they know they have to have a president role. So the wheels are in motion, and we're already hearing names like Matt George, Dawson's name is out there. Matt Jr. Luongo has been, people just throw out names, right? Patrick Roy and Roberto Luongo names. I don't know if there's any interest in either of them in the general manager of Montreal Canadiens, but they're in full fun. Patrick Roy would be an interesting decision right there. I have to say, if they did name Patrick Roy, that would be fascinating to see how that goes. But the one thing with Roy, you always know how he feels, right? So that's one good thing with Roy. You always know exactly where he stands on things. He'll tell you. So yeah, a lot going on with Montreal, and it looks like they're ready to redo the front office completely. Evander Kane. So word is out now that Evander Kane and the waiver wire should be up in about 10 minutes. He's going to be placed on waivers by the San Jose Sharks. And once he clears, he'll be sent to the NHL. I can't see Evander Kane with that contract of 2 teams that are at the cabinet and consider it. And for teams with much cap space, I don't know that they bring in Evander Kane. So it looks like he's going to be getting sent out of the San Jose Sharks. Interestingly enough, I think the next game I'm seeing here locally involving the Pittsburgh Penguins is the San Jose Barracuda. So that could be bizarre, right? If he was here, and of course he's been it'll be interesting to see if he does actually play the Barracuda. That is want that in there right now. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like. Ready to get your project of the year? A ski advisor can help. Oh, back. All right. So these are the days for your Monday, and we'll see if there's any other big news that takes place today. I mean, hey, Kane going on waivers, likely players today, we'll see. And we'll discuss that, and of course, Montreal continuing to make news. We'll see what big news is next. So the Pittsburgh Penguins are the big news so far today. They've been sold to Fenway Sports, which is kind of weird based out of Boston and all that, but they bought the Pittsburgh Penguins. Mary Lemieux, Ron Burkle will remain as part of the ownership group. They're excited to add them to their team, and it all sounds good. There's no danger of this being eventually it's going to be a move. That's not at all part of it, and that'll always be discussed with certain teams. Pittsburgh being one of those teams, there have been times where there's been discussions of their viability. Right now, it feels like Pittsburgh is a very healthy market. That hasn't always been the case, but healthy market now. Now they've got good ownership. Not that there's anything wrong with previous ownership. It feels like they're deeper pockets. They own the Red Sox in baseball, Liverpool in the English Premier League, and Fenway Racing in NASCAR. So yeah, there's some deep pockets here, which talks, right? The ownership and the NHL, the way that it works, to have them. right now. So it's definitely good for Pittsburgh. And again, I don't see this as a threat to the stability of the franchise or long term in Pittsburgh. Ravens is the clear-cut favorite right now for the Calder Trophy. We're a quarter of the way through the season. I can discuss this periodically with winners and playing and all that. Raymond is having a very good rookie season, which does not surprise me at all. All of the scouting on him was about how he looked NHL ready, how he should translate very, very well, how he did kind of everything really, really well. And when he was drafted, I felt that was a really good pick for the Wings, and that fans would really like him. I understand winning the draft lottery feels like it's a bigger deal, but drafting smart is more important than drafting early. And you're definitely drafting smart. The number one contender for the Calder outside of Raymond is Cider. So 2 Red Wings, I would think, are the top picks. And again, once we get further through the season, I do a video on this year's rookie class, which is really remarkable. And we can discuss, who may end up being a dark horse and who may be a favorite, and Raymond may still be a favorite at that point. There will be a hearing today for Brad Marchand. He was guilty of slew foot last night against the Canucks, against Oliver and Larson. And, I mean, he's not popular anyways with Canucks fans, dating back to the submarine hit on Salo, which I myself took a lot of exception to. The slew foot, I thought, wasn't as bad as that, and yet I do feel like because of the hearing, so there's going to be a suspension. I would think a game, maybe 2. It depends on whether or not they consider it to be a defender, what they deem that takes place. Because like Ekman Larson stayed in the game, does that factor into it? Probably. So I would think a game, maybe 2. Either way, as long as he's good to play in Vancouver with Boston when Boston's here next week. That'll make the game all the more interesting. Marchand always gets a pretty loud response from Vancouver fans. I don't think that'll be different, even though Vancouver isn't very full of games right now. I don't think that's going to make that fans here for Marchand. I don't think that's possible. Brendan Lemieux is hearing it tomorrow. So the last time that I discussed that, we didn't have a firm date. The date is tomorrow. That's when I'll have a discussion with him. And then they'll make the announcement on how long he's got. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of for how long, right? And again,
How shopping has changed. Toyota Drive offers you a smarter, more convenient car buying experience. Browse our selection of hundreds of certified used cars online and get your new car delivered straight to your door with our same-day delivery. Enjoy peace of mind knowing that every Toyota Drive car will pass a rigorous 150-point inspection. You'll have a full 7 days to hold it or return it. So if you change your mind, we'll pick it up and give you a full refund. It's the smarter, safer way to buy a car. Painting found in an ancient bedroom that depicts an uncomfortable scene, to a large NASA mix-up, all the way to a couple ways that the world might end. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Before we dive into this video though, guys, I just want to take a quick second and tell you about today's video sponsor, the Adventure Chapter.